Feel free to come down closer if you would like, or not. But you're in the Durbin Feeling Language Center. How many people? Classrooms have the same alphabet, the same pictures of a policeman or a dog or a cat. It's just all in Cherokee. And so they just speak Cherokee to them all day. So it's a great thing. And we have on this side is the adult immersion called the Cherokee Language Master Apprentice Program, and where adults learn the language because they found that there's a gap because the grandparents spoke Cherokee because they grew up speaking Cherokee. And so we were teaching little kids, and they decided that they go home and the parents can't speak to the grandparents or the kids. And so this is to grow parents that speak, but also teachers. Those parents are teachers, not only to their kids, but they go out into our group and teach Cherokee as well. So that's kind of the history. There's construction going on back here that is a head start about the size of this building, so that's super impressive. In the back, they broke ground on a middle school, so you'll be able to go all the way to high school. Of course, they have Sequoia High School, and they have a kind of like a junior CL MAP program. That's what this is called. And then over here we have Cherokee Village that has some speaker houses. So if the entire family speak Cherokee and other families speak only Cherokees, they can go over there and just be in Cherokee 100% of the time if they want to. Okay, so and they're growing that village. There's going to be a community center in the back as well. And so a lot of great things are happening with the language, and a lot of exciting things that you're gonna find out in the next couple of few months. You're gonna find out there's some amazing things. They also are doing a lot of work with Cherokee Films. I know that we have a couple of cartoons that are produced and made just by Cherokees. Come in. So we still have a couple of minutes before we get officially started. So, that you can go on Cherokee.org or you can go to language.cherokee.org. It has tons of stuff out there about the Cherokee language if you want to learn. It has poster-sized PDFs for you to do, if you want to know the trees, birds, the animals, fish, everything in Cherokee, and it shows you not only the syllabary, but it shows you the phonetics as well, so it's easy for you to learn. So that's exciting to me, and there's a lot of passion goes in this, and the administration and the tribal council have been very passionate about helping save the language, because we have maybe 1,500 speakers, first language speakers left, and they're aging. Out in front of the building there's a bell, like a regular school bell, but there are two ropes on there. One is school bell style, where it goes ding, ding, like a church style, and the other one has just a clanger on the side that hits the side of the bell. And when a speaker passes, they ring that bell for everybody. Gathers outside, the family comes out, and everybody gathers and they ring the bell once every 2 or 3 seconds for every year that person was alive. So you can imagine the impact. Everyone's in silence of ringing that bell for 4 or 5 minutes in silence. It's it's an emotional experience. So anyway, we will now, I think we can probably get started. So If we're ready to go, Siona God, Kevin Stretch, Dawadon, Skasti, Jolly Gigante, Galilega Jigadoha. My name is Kevin Stretch. My Cherokee name is Skasti, and I'm excited to be here. This has been a great event, these Cherokee talks, and tomorrow we're going to have another full slate of Cherokee talks. Our next young man is going to talk about Cherokee traditions and our environment. Dr. Caleb Hickman, a proud citizen of the Cherokee Nation, found his love for nature amidst the oak-hickory forest, lakes, and clear creeks in northeastern Oklahoma, where he was born and raised. His lifelong passion for understanding and preserving the natural world has led him from the mountaintops to deserts, studying a diverse array of ecosystems and organisms. For over a decade, Caleb has dedicated himself to the biodiverse Cherokee homeland, striving to reconnect the Cherokee lifeways through the natural world and inspiring others to deepen their connection to their native environment. With a bachelor's degree in biology from Missouri Valley College, a master's degree from Missouri State University, and a Ph.D. from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, he is committed to blending scientific excellence and the rich cultural heritage of Anikkatua. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Caleb Hickman.
Wado. Osio. Osio Nagad. Osio Nikaduagi. Caleb Hickman Dawado, Unegaganti, Awi Dikti Dawado, Talagiganti. Kuwaya, Oklahoma, Digwitansha, Tahlequah, no le Tuckasegee, North Carolina, Uweya. So, as he said, I am from Northeast Oklahoma originally. I really appreciate the introduction, so that paints the picture of my background a little bit. So, I wouldn't normally give an introduction again a second time, but I'm saying my name in Cherokee, and I'm saying where I'm from and the language, largely because, let's go ahead and get this up. I originally, although I'm originally from Oklahoma, from Pryor Creek, that's Kuwaya, I have lived all over the country, and I've become a biologist in that time and worked in different capacities as an ecologist in the environment. And now I'm living in the homeland. And so part of what I want to talk to you about today is the importance of embracing the environment from a Cherokee perspective. And this is something that you may or may not have already. If you are Cherokee and you have family members that have passed down any sort of knowledge, you may not even know it. Or you're part of a community within the Cherokee Nation or in the homeland. It may be important, but I want to kind of paint that picture. First of all, I do want to give a nod to this man next to me. So it was brought up early on. I don't know if the folks on YouTube heard this, but we are in the Durbin Feeling Center. This is Durbin Feeling right here. So I was lucky enough to take one of his classes out in North Carolina several years ago. And he was a very gentle man, very knowledgeable. If you know about this man, you know how impactful his work has been throughout his lifetime. Durbin Feeling Jigesan was very important to us. So it's an honor to me to be here presenting in a building named after him, in a place where we are protecting, preserving, and passing along our Cherokee language. I'm a very low-level second language learner, as we call ourselves. Is anyone else a Cherokee language learner? Trying to learn some? Okay. Raise your hand high, okay? I want you to do that. Because you should be proud of yourselves. Yes, I'm very proud of you. And if you haven't taken it on yet, it doesn't matter what you're learning. Try to learn something. And hopefully I'll convey why. So first of all, in our language, there's a lot of information embedded in it. It may not seem like it from those that haven't explored it much, but those of you that have may know that we have a polysynthetic language. And really, I'm going to summarize this in a little more plain language. It is descriptive, okay? Our language is incredibly descriptive. So much that, okay, I'm a science guy, right? I enjoy learning how descriptive the language is from speakers. The importance of that, to me, means that I can ask about the name of a place, a plant, or an animal, and then I can ask someone to help me describe it in English, and it's going to be difficult for a speaker. But if they can, I learn a lot. I learn about its habits, possibly. I learn about the way it not just looks, but how it interacts with its environment. So these are incredibly important. And I also want to stress the point that if it is descriptive, it makes most sense that the language be used in a place where it was born. And it can also provide its information, potentially historically. If you talk to the folks that are part of the language consortium, and that's people that are in the homeland with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, UKB, and Cherokee Nation, they work together. And they'll often say they have shared knowledge through the language that transcends time. So context matters. And I think that I wanted to use the language to kind of segue into the perspectives of why the environment and biology, I think, is important for us to understand as well. So there is this animal. Does anybody know what this is? It's a black snake, okay? Some people call it a black rat snake, okay? Some people would go ick or ooh, right, when you see it. When I was a kid, I didn't appreciate these animals a whole lot. As I got older, I learned about them. The poor things don't even have arms or legs, so we should, feel for them some. But their name, galegi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that quite right, and I do apologize. I am a learner, but I was encouraged by a few speakers to keep on trying. Galegi, from what I understand, means it climbs, okay? When I found that out, it was amazing to me, and it might not be to you, but I know that there are other black-colored snakes out there. So the common name, black snake, even black rat snake, isn't sufficient enough for this animal, for me. If someone asked me, can you describe to someone from Europe about these animals, how you'd identify them, I would say, well, it's the one that's usually climbing. It's our best climber. And that's perfect, right? And that's in the Cherokee language, right? So people knew that for a long time. Okay, so I want to kind of transition to something different. And I'm going to ask you to do something, an activity. All right, are you guys game for this? I hope so. All right, you can get your phones out. If you have your phone, I give you permission, get it out. If you have a piece of paper, that works too, if you can do that. Or let's just use our brains, either one, any of those. I'm going to ask you to answer a question. And I just want you to write some notes. I'm not going to collect anything. You can cheat off your partner if you really want to. What does environment mean to you? When you think of that word environment, the environment, it could be anything. Just think about it if you want to. And I'll give you just a few minutes, or not minutes, a few seconds. How about 20 seconds? Does that sound good? So and those of you watching on YouTube, please participate. So take a few seconds here. We'll stand in silence while everybody does that. Right. Think of as many words as you can. Okay? All right. So, the environment. I'm going to ask you questions now, okay? And I'm so happy you all are here. By the way, this is the end of the day. So the fact that you're still awake and attending things makes me super happy, so I appreciate it. It's after 5. Did anybody in their list put down the earth or soil or anything like that? Okay, good. So we have a few people that did that. That's good. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, you can't see this, but I'll try to summarize. Okay, how about water? We have some waters. Okay, a few more water. What about plants? Okay, even more plants. Animals? Okay. Some of you might have been thinking of your work environment, but and that's fine. Or your home environment, I don't know. Okay, what about air? Okay, I'm surprised. That's good. So quite a few air. Did anybody put humans in there? Oh, we had a few. I'm surprised. I would have thought not many. So just a few, not as many as the others. Did anybody think of interactions of any sort? Wow, we had some interactions. That's good. Okay, you guys are thinking like Cherokees. Okay, I'm serious, and I'll describe why. So, the reason I bring that up, usually when we think of the environment, we think of our ecosystem. That's another name, right? We might not consider humans as part of it. In fact, settler colonial science, that's what I'm going to call it right now, the people that brought our perspectives from across the ocean here, brought the idea that humans need to be the dominating force, that we are the ones that make changes, that we are the ones that fix things. And this perspective is there, right? And that's how we have really moved through the world for quite some time now. And the idea that there are linear relationships between us and these organisms, we eat them, right? We use them for medicine. Or we cause problems to them. We poison them. We ate too many of them. So there's things that we do, right? So we feel like we have to either fix it or we're causing some damage. Humans are oftentimes considered at the top of the food web, right? That you've heard that, rather than within it. And it's not until more recently that ecology is starting to reconsider this perspective, okay? And there is this design. I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is pretty cool. It puts people at the top, but then if we rearrange it, you can put people in the within, right? So this is what I'm talking about. One perspective is among Native communities that are working with scientists, modern ecologists, is this idea of reciprocity, that we are part of this ecosystem, that we have a relationship. And so I've been talking with a few fluent speakers from both the East and the West on this, and I was kind of hesitant to introduce this, but I think it's still maybe not perfect, but this word, dejadali skalatani dohi, echehesti, basically summarizes a longer description, which I tried to encapsulate below, but I'll just describe it, okay? I don't mean for you guys to read the whole thing. But there are parts of it that mentions all of us together, okay? That we are together, and that and that includes all organisms, not just humans, right? And that we have this reciprocal process where we are all reliant on each other, okay? And that last part, eche hesti, or hesti, means now and forever. And that's the part that a lot of reciprocity perspectives that are written don't include. And I think that's really important. And this word is kind of similar to some of our teachings. Ryan Mackey-Wade talks about this some. Other people, of course, in your communities have talked about this, but there are some words that you can talk about in a whole paragraph or for 30 minutes, or, but there are words this long that can do that. And so we should learn from those. And I think that's important. So another thing I want to talk about is that you are likely carrying information. So if you're a Cherokee that feels disconnected, you may live far away. Within your family, you've probably inherited some sort of information. Stories are very important. So has anybody read Cherokee stories? You guys know any? Yeah? Several people? Okay. So in our stories, we don't celebrate the bigger charismatic animals all the time, do we? Right? Sometimes it's the smaller ones. Sometimes there's lessons. Sometimes there doesn't seem to be a lesson. Sometimes it's just a story, and maybe you can get something out of it later. And sometimes these stories happen in real time. We're learning from people around us. So doye, you guys know this animal? Beavers? Okay, a beaver makes a dam. You guys know that? Beavers construct dams, and years ago I was in North Carolina with a Cherokee elder, and we're hanging out, and we're just talking, and he says, hey, there's a beaver that made a dam over there at this small creek. I said, yeah. He said, so what do people think of that? And I said, well, a lot of people don't like it. And he said, why? I said, well, it's eroding the small road. It was a small gravel road, not a main road. It was eroding this road. And I said, it's and it's also starting to bleed into one of the gardens. And he said, well, what is it that changes? Are there any good things that come out of it? I said, oh yeah, they create a whole wetland. The ecosystem changes. These ducks come in that we never see anywhere else. Aquatic insects show up that we never see anywhere else. And he said, well, are there medicine plants that show up? I said, yes, of course. Yes, some great things show up when these things are there. And I proceeded to tell him what they're doing out west. And historically, they even dropped beavers from airplanes into remote areas so they could change the ecosystem. I know that sounds crazy, but that really did happen. But it's interesting, right, how a local culture is so different. People want to remove them, and when I say remove them, I mean kill them. Because they're present and they change things. And he proceeded to tell me that's not our way. We're supposed to learn. We're part of this. Maybe we could adapt. If there's something we can get out of it, great. But even if there's not something we get out of it, is it helping others in our environment? Okay? So that was pretty powerful to me, right? But then you have to sort of re-educate people and say that might not be part of our traditional value. Of course, beavers, if they grow in abundance and they could be useful, people eat them. So that's another component of the decision making. But it's just reconsidering, slowing down, and thinking about the whole ecosystem, not just yourself, not a one-way transition. Another historical example are white-tailed deer. Here in Oklahoma, we have no shortage of white-tailed deer, really. But in the east, deer densities are low. In some areas of the mountains in southern Appalachians, there's less than 10 animals, sometimes 5 animals per square mile, okay? That's really low. You might see 100 per square mile here. I don't know for sure. But that's as a result of the fur trade, okay? So the colonial Americans developed a fur trade, which is a worldwide trade. And Cherokees were involved in this. So our ancestors participated in the fur trade. And up to 1 million pelts annually were taken. It ended around 1800, not because they wanted to end it, it's because they ran out of fur, they ran out of deer. In fact, you might not be able to read this down below. This is out of James Mooney's book. James Mooney was an anthropologist that surveyed and lived and worked with the Eastern Cherokees in the mid to late 1800s. And he said by then, he said that the deer were extinct. And so a normal prayer that you would say after you harvest a deer was lost because of the extinction of the deer. So even then, and it has continued. Now we still have low densities of deer. Some of that's due to habitat. So the habitat's completely different now. But it's also as a result of this trade. So this had influences on our culture. When men are leaving, your community for long periods of time, they aren't participating in normal activities at home, okay? They're away from family. They're away from ceremony. They're away from all these things that we've been doing for thousands of years. So this trade really changed things, okay? So this market perspective, capitalism has its good and it also has its bad, and that was our first dose of it, really. The other downside of this is around that time in the 1700s, and some would say it maybe is a coincidence, but I like to think that maybe our stories about medicine may have really been elevated during this time, but we lost half our population due to disease in the 1700s, mid-1700s. And that's when we were doing this, okay? And so that story, if you know it, I'm not going to rehash the whole story, but the story is about us taking too much. We are mistreating these animals. And so they brought disease to us. And who saved the day? The plants, okay? They were a medicine, okay? And they decided to develop medicine for us. Now, if you didn't know, our homeland was vast. This is the Royce map, and it's an old map. Years ago, about 1900, I believe, he did a lot of investigating and discovered the extent of the Cherokee homeland. Now, we didn't see ownership the same way, right, like you do today. We existed in these places, we used certain areas, and it ebbed and flowed through time. But these are our extents. It was over 124,000 square miles. And so it surrounded that southern Appalachian mountain range, okay? It's 7 to 8 present-day states were included in that. So it was vast. In this area, there's an incredible biodiversity that we interacted with. And I'll get to that a little bit more. But just as an example, so I put together pre-Columbian, so that map looked like this. If you like graphs, here's a graph. And then post-disease, so after we had disease hit our society, we lost land too. So then we went through what's called cessions, and we lost land. And then it continued, of course, until our Indian Removal Act, right? And then, but I also included Cherokee lands today. That includes about 7,000 acres that we have for Cherokee Nation. That is we don't really own it, right? It's our reservation, but we share it with a lot of non-Cherokee folks, right? But it's a jurisdiction. And I argue that with the movement of Cherokee and the reduced land base, right? So the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians is less than 1% of that homeland. Although they're in the homeland, they're still not connected to all that biodiversity. We have fewer species with names, and as I described, that might mean something. It might be information that's useful for us. So we're not interacting with those same species anymore. Medicine, ceremonies, stories, lessons. An example of this are fish diversity. I love fish, and I grew up going to the Kenwood Hills a lot and looking at the fish, catching fish with my brothers, who are right here. 2 of my brothers. I hope the other one's watching. But I grew to love all of our darters. We have incredible fish diversity in the Ozarks, but if you look at this map here, you can see it's higher diversity out in the homeland. So I've sort of made these, you can see it, I hope, but that's where the homeland is, and this is where we are in Oklahoma. Amphibian diversity is also incredibly high. Amphibians are those little animals, frogs, salamanders, right? These animals, they breathe through their skin. They have to be tied to water. The Southern Appalachians is home to more different kinds of salamanders than any place on the planet. Any place on the planet. And they have a higher abundance, density than any place on the planet. And I'll describe a little bit why that's important. Also, tree diversity. So you can drive the Blue Ridge Parkway just in a few miles and see more different kinds of trees than you'll see in the entire state of California. That's pretty cool, right? And also, comparatively to the state of California, there's more fish species in a 7-mile stretch of a river than the entire state of California. So, because I work there, so I know that. In North Carolina. Endemic plant taxa, that's the plants that only exist there, okay? Like here, we might have species that only exist in these particular areas, these counties. The Southern Appalachian is high diversity there. Now, how could we interact with this place? So I wager that most Cherokees no longer live in the homeland. Who has visited that area that I talked about? Not everyone, right? Not everybody. Who has visited and actually went into the woods? Fewer. Who put their head underwater and looked at animals underwater or caught animals? Got a guy here who did that. So if you haven't harvested anything there, you haven't explored it. If you just pass through, you may not have really interacted with that environment, okay? I encourage all Cherokees, I don't care where you live, it could be Oregon or California, go outside, get your kids outside, learn your language, and reconnect. But if you can, go to the homeland somewhere. And one way to do that is to use Forest Service lands or national park lands. Obviously, there's a lot of people that have our homeland now, right? We know that. But there's ways to access this. And the tribes are working at this now. So all our Cherokee tribes are working hard to figure out agreements, plant gathering agreements or participatory agreements on these landscapes so that we can reconnect. And that's incredibly important for all of you. So here in Oklahoma, I think we can still keep that going, even though we have about 7,000 acres, but it's shared among non-Cherokee people, right? And sometimes other tribes, people move in. But I think we are mostly populated with private land. And I know Cherokee Nation is working hard to buy up new land so that we can have this reconnection. And I think that's really important in our homeland here, so where we live. But what we're missing out back in the homeland might be things like butternut that doesn't exist here, Turk's cap lily, and things like ramps. Okay, have anybody heard of ramps? Okay, Washti. Okay, ramps are wild leeks. Now, who grew up hearing about wild onions? Okay. Now, my brothers and I, we used to pick our wild onions with our grandma. She'd have us go out and pick them and take them to like Miss Branstetter and Pryor or different elders. And, or we'd cook them at home with eggs. Eggs, anybody? Yeah. So she'd call it wild eggs and onions, right? It's kind of making a joke. But so we would harvest those wild onions. I argue that because we don't have wild leeks here in Oklahoma. We don't have them. I think that they're a surrogate for these ramps or wild leeks or Washti. I think that they're what we are trying to hold on to in Oklahoma that we don't have access to. And now, I think because of Rachel Ray or somebody, she had a show where she introduced these to everybody else in the world, and now they're being potentially over-harvested in the homeland. So I'm not going to tell you to go run there and pick as many as you can, because if we did that with so many Cherokees, that might be a problem, right? But I would love for you to understand what they taste like. I think they're incredibly superior to our wild onions. I hate to say it, since I've been living there, I love ramps. But besides these examples of, we are disconnected in some level, I do know that. But we try to retain these connections, right? And sometimes it's through philosophy, right? So I brought up one philosophy, but sometimes it's these discussions you might have with a friend or family member. I heard this from my old friend Jamie Long, Jigesan. He said, he knew I like salamanders. I love salamanders. They're really cool animals. He said, never drink from a branch unless it's rolled over 5 rocks in a lizard's back. A lizard being a salamander. Folks in the East will often call them branch lizards, right? They're salamanders. They're an amphibian. They have what we call semi-permeable skin, so they breathe and they basically drink through their skin. What's interesting about these animals is they are indicator species. It wasn't until I heard this similar quotes or just the same one from other people that it hit me, it clicked. This is traditional knowledge. And this is kind of a sidebar here about traditional knowledge. Traditional ecological knowledge is a growing interest. Federal scientists, academic scientists are now tapping us on the shoulder asking for this information. They want to talk to our elders. And we often get asked to include it in Western science. In my mind, it's just science. It's just longer term. I don't like the separation. It's just science. And it's over thousands of years of trial and error and experimentation that we come to these conclusions. And we use stories and catchy things to say to pass on to the next generation. Because how boring is a science class, right? So this is a better way, right? So you can make it kind of catchy, 5 rocks and a lizard's back, right? So what this does, it tells me so amphibians, if you didn't know, salamanders, they are indicators of water quality. If there are minute amounts of toxins, natural or man-made, in water, they will bioaccumulate it, right? And they will have problems in their development and maybe even survival. So if you see their population is reduced, it should raise a red flag. It's kind of the canary in the coal mine, but it's in the water, right? You get it, right? So even modern times, I knew this, right? I studied these animals, but it didn't click that this guy that was traditional knowledge. In the 5 rocks, I figured that out. 5 rocks tells us about siltation, so runoff. When we make roads, we build houses, we have soil runoff, and it gets into our streams. And you don't want to drink that either. And the flowing water is incredibly important. As another side, our water quality is super important. And this transcends to northeastern Oklahoma as well, where we have incredible water quality issues, don't we? And it's everywhere. It's worldwide. Water is life. It's our medicine. It's Cherokee's. And rolling over tells me it's moving. And if a salamander's there, it's cold and it's clear. So these are incredibly important. And it's getting harder and harder to find spots, even here in Oklahoma, that have cold, clear, flowing water. Okay? And that's very important to us. With that, I would be happy to take any questions. Wado, for your time, I appreciate it.
For the viewing audience at home, if you have a question, you'll speak it in the mic so they can hear you at home, okay? So. Surely someone has a question.
Do you have any, whether it's books or particular people or anything, or newsletters or whatever, that you just recommend as general resources on these subjects?
Oh, gosh. Okay. There are libraries full of us, about us. Unfortunately, a lot of times we don't even have access to that. So if you're at a university, you can look these up, but there's a lot of books. The Earth Dwellers is a new one that's out. The Cherokee Earth Dwellers, it's a pretty good one, I think. I've browsed it, and there's some good stuff in it. I would say that's a new one. It was a compilation of years and years and years of work trying to relate not just the species names, like a lot of times you'll see species names listed, but in that book there's some philosophy. There's a few others out there. Let's talk after, and I can maybe even give you some electronic ones if you have your computer or anything with you, but I'd be happy to help, yeah.
Do you think in our Cherokee language, when you ask somebody, you say, "Sio," Tohija, you're asking them, "How are you?" I mean, as far as how are you with everything around you, in your environment, right?
Yeah. So you saw in the beginning there, even dohi is in there. In that, when I gave that long word, dohi or tohi, being at peace in some way is related to that. I've been told this. Tom Belt is really good at talking about this. He's from Oklahoma, but he lives out east. He does a great job of describing, and there's a book called Tohi that he has, where, when you're asking, Tohija, you say, "Are you at peace?" And then, the answer, Tohi, well, you're at peace, so I am at peace. But it's more complicated than that from what I understand. So you can go into a long sermon about what it means. I've heard it related also, that word related to water, and how it is, how it moves the way it should. And dohi, the way it was described to me just this week in this building, I came to talk to some of the knowledge holders. It was described to me as kind of a cycle too, how things are interconnected, but a cycle, dohi. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
Here's a question.
Hi, we came in kind of late, but is there a way for someone to find out more about you and your work, a way to reach out to you?
Well, you can Google me. That's the best. We have a website that's down where I work. Um, yeah, I mean, let's talk afterwards. You can get a hold of me. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk to anybody that's a Cherokee, for sure, yeah. Or anybody. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, let's talk. You have a question, sir? This is my, yeah. Oh, this is my, Agidohi, Travis, Dundo.
I
If
just
you can
wanted
say
to
it-
know what poison ivy is good for.
Well, what is poison ivy good for? It's not good for you, but hey, you know what? Deer love it. White-tailed deer eat it. Really, they love it, yeah. So it's food. There you go, huh? I got an answer for you. Smarty pants. That's my brother. You know, he was going to throw tomatoes at me, but.
Anyone else?
Well, I feel like you just gave us a mission is what you did. You just said, here's the language, there are words and they have greater meanings. And so your mission, everybody, is to go out there and learn the language, and then you will learn the names of things, and learning the names of things will tell you about, and there's knowledge hiding in there. And,
Yeah.
and also the stories. The stories have knowledge hiding in them. So basically, I just feel like you just gave us a mission. So how do we know when we've arrived? I mean, I'm trying to come up with a question, but I'm just saying.
I think,
the
no, I
statement.
appreciate that. So he just summarized my talk, and I appreciate it. I should have done that, but no, I'm glad you noticed that. That is something. I have a mission. I want to get more Cherokees into our environment, because I think without the environment, our language doesn't have context, right? And you don't have context. So we need to be outside. If you're not a hunter, you don't need to hunt. You can be in the woods. If you're not into plants, just be in the woods. Just be in the water. Find some clean, cold water that's moving. And try to learn. Ask questions in your family. And realize that maybe a weird saying that your family had in your Cherokee side might actually have some knowledge embedded, okay? Even if it's in English, there's knowledge there. But yes, I gave you a mission. Please try. Just keep trying.
I was wondering if you could talk for just a minute about River Cane,
Oh, yeah.
Dihia.
So River Cane, thank you for bringing that up. I can't talk about everything, right? So a lot of times when I give talks, I'll talk about the charismatic animals that I work with, bear and deer and elk. But River Cane has a special place for me. River Cane has lost 98% of its distribution throughout the southeast. It's a southeastern grass, basically. It's a type of bamboo, I guess, but it's really not like the Asian bamboo at all, which is kind of invasive. So it's not a good surrogate. River cane was our plastic historically as Cherokees and a lot of southeastern tribes. It was used for everything. Today we mainly use it for artisan use, right? So making baskets, things are on display, it's sold in art markets. But back then our homes were aligned with it. It provides structure, floor mats, eating tables, everything you can imagine was likely made from river cane. And we worked in that ecosystem. From what I understand, we're still trying to learn about it, right? There's a lot of great river cane specialists out there. I'm not going to claim to be one, but I lean on those folks. But from what I understand, our role with river cane was very interconnected. There's a lot of other species that we think use river cane, and so I am studying that right now. So I'm trying to understand the relationship of river cane as an ecosystem. There's old stories of extinct birds that lived in this. They would see thousands of them in river cane. Early explorers talked about seeing river cane for miles, and we decided to cut it because cattle couldn't get to the river, or we wanted to grow something, a monoculture of something else, okay? So we didn't live as part of that ecosystem. We dominated it. So the downfall followed settler colonial perspectives, for sure. Oh, well.
All right. Is there a source for where you go to learn about the base of the word, like where it comes from, how it's descriptive? Like we know geekly is dog, but we don't know like what that means. And you
Right.
can go to the gift shop or just about anywhere and
Yeah.
find a list of names, but not a list of descriptions.
Oh, man. That's a great question. I think we're getting away from the word lists now. I think there's a lot in this building. I talk to people that are trying to break it down more because it's in their brain, right? From what I understand, and if there's any speakers here, please answer this for me because you could do it better than I could. But from what I understand, in a speaker's mind when they're talking, they're seeing pictures. It's like a film. And if that's true, that's not how we think in English, right? We see a thing, it's called that. It doesn't do anything until we actually see it do something. But in their brain and they're describing it, it's doing it. So to break that down to anyone else that doesn't speak their language is difficult. So, but they're having to dumb it down for us. And they're starting to do it more and more. So you'll see there's a few books out there that are breaking it out. So the more intense language books do it. There's some that folks are developing now that kind of go into that. Ryan Mackey does a great job because he's a second language learner. This is now an advanced, he's an advanced guy. He's probably a speaker, I think. But that man, in my mind, and there's a few others like him that are great at, because they are coming at it from our perspective, right? But the speakers from this building, they're doing it. I don't know of a good source. There's not a dictionary that does a good job, I don't think. But again, we need to stop thinking about dictionaries, I think. So it's like, and working it out. So when you learn the language, you'll learn that the prefixes and suffixes have specific meanings, right? And some particular words have meanings. And then with those together, it tells the story. I don't think they've gotten far enough. I mean, for me anyway, I don't think it's comprehensive. There's quite a bit out there. I think we're probably one of the most studied tribes. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't have access to some of these libraries.
I was going to ask maybe Brad Anderson's book on Cherokee grammar, kind of.
Yeah,
give us some
I mean,
breakdown?
any Cherokee grammar book would probably, and there's a few out there. Durbin Feeling, this building's named after, okay? He broke down the language pretty well in a lot of ways. So there's a few folks like that. I'm not a language expert, so I'm a biologist. So I should probably quit answering too many questions on language before I get in trouble. Yeah.
By the way, language.cherokee.org has just about everything that we have available.
There we go, yeah. Language.
Language.cherokee.org.
Yeah, thank you so much for your talk. I was wondering, because you talked about how there's renewed interest in these types of traditional ecological knowledges, does that have any positive or transformative impact in your experience to like settler colonial science? Do you think people are actually learning from it, or is it kind of greenwashing almost, you know? Like,
Is it what? What'd you say?
or is it more greenwashing, or I don't know what the term should be, you know?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel like it's actually
Oh, wow.
making a change, that people are getting interested in this again?
I think, so, okay, this is me as a scientist talking now. So I used to work in universities, and grants come around every now and then, and they're deadlines, and they're looking for broader impacts. And now I've gotten folks to kind of look out for the people that want to check boxes, and they want to work with a tribe, right? And it allows them, and they're seeing this TEK, we call it, traditional ecological knowledge, as sometimes a way, they just want to include it. It's additional. It's not a core part of their work. That's problematic in my mind. So I got with folks from other tribes during COVID, and we wrote a book chapter on this topic of how to do research with tribes. And we kind of addressed this issue a bit, right? Where TEK is kind of the flavor of the day, traditional ecological knowledge. And there's downsides to it. but there are upsides if they do it right. And there's this whole perspective of co-production now, not collaboration. It's a different thing. A lot of times in collaborations with tribes, the researchers will take kind of a dominating role, and it's paternalistic, we call it. So they're like the parent or the child. And we're tired of being in that role. So some of us go to school a long time. We may have to leave where we're from and to do it. And we want to represent our tribe. We want to represent Cherokees, which I'm doing. And other people in other tribes are doing the same thing. And so we have our own professionals. And so we want co-production. We want equal standing, equal authorships, equal funding, equal decision-making. It should benefit the tribe. So if you're going to come work with us, how does it help the tribe? That's the things we ask. So we don't have to give away our information. If we have traditional knowledge and it's good for our people, we'll share it with our people. But if we see that, say, because of climate change, there's new stuff coming out, they're asking tribes all the time, because we've been here for thousands of years on this continent, how could we coexist? How can we change and adapt? Is there anything inserted? Are they hiding anything over there? So that's kind of how it feels, right? But sometimes that information is transitioned. And yes, absolutely yes, there are managers now using that knowledge. There are burning practices being put into place because they're noticing the tribes where they have used burn management looks better than what the Forest Service is doing. Okay, these are federal folks. They're supposed to be the experts. And there's a lot of great examples of that and where they're actually noticing. It's just that we are forced to put our science, on par with Western science because we don't have statistical data a lot of times to back it up. So I walk both worlds. So I try hard, to blend or understand how we can get them together, but sometimes they don't belong together, and that's perfectly fine.
I have more questions. Tomorrow at 11, by the way, in this very room, will be ethnobiologist Feather Smith that will speak specifically about Cherokee plants and medicine plants, stuff like that.
Well, that's perfect for my question. So I was thinking about resources like the seed bank, and I was wondering if you could talk about if that is a resource or what resources you see for people who are not biologists to contribute towards rebuilding some of these environments.
I mean, so the seed bank stuff, that's what, so Feather, we'll talk about that tomorrow, I'm positive, right?
Absolutely.
I think she will talk about that. So attend that for sure, and you can ask her. But I think anytime that you're trying to grow native ecosystems, so we had a more complex agriculture before settler colonials came. We know that. And it would be really hard to replicate, but if you want to try, you should. Really, it's perpetuating these native species and trying to have a forest ecosystem that is healthy. And when I mean healthy, it doesn't mean you're the only one eating it, okay? And that we need to get away from that mindset, as I was talking about. It has to be valuable for the ecosystem. And with some Googling, you can find out what species are good for where you live. And you can also work, there are state agencies that work hard, and they will supply funding and conservation easements, they're called, but they will help you with maybe even burns if you have a amount of land, and they will help you manage your landscape. I hope that we can be doing that eventually as Cherokees, but in the meantime, I think looking into forest agriculture is important. Also looking into just keeping a diverse array of species on your property would be very valuable. Does that answer your question? I hope it.
Try to search for legitimate resources.
Yeah.
Not everything on Facebook. It's shocking, I realize, but.
Right. Yeah, be careful of buying. So if you do try to purchase seeds online or some other place, a lot of times those seed packs will have like invasive species.
Right.
So make sure you look at the species lists ahead of time and understand what you're about to spread on your land, because you don't want it to take over and cause a problem. And some of the mixes do have that, so I would be really wary of that. Non-native species, doesn't always mean it's invasive, but be careful of anything, that may have like an Asian origin, because when you spread those, they can sometimes take over. So there's, USDA has an invasive species list wherever you live. So you go on their website.
Well, thank you so much.
How long?
Everything was good. Adele for coming, and we're going to start again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Adele.
See that? Oh, you didn't see it.